When I tell you that all week I heard that dominate was too strong of a word, that Iowa State wasn't going to be able to hang with Arizona's line, well, I've got news for you. Iowa State is 5-0, and we're talking about how they dominated Arizona today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. It's completely free. Helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking about Iowa State's big win over Arizona. We'll talk offense. We'll talk defense. What did I gather? What did I see? Then we're going to talk about special teams a little bit, squeeze that in before we get into the injury concerns. I don't want to do it, but I was forced to. It's had to put it on the slate. Okay, so I can't wait to dive into all of that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Iowa State comes away with a big win over Arizona, 39-14. And it doesn't even feel like it was that close. There were a few drives that, honestly, Iowa State kind of stole. So I'm okay with a 39-14, but it wasn't ever really that close. 22-0 at one point, Iowa State led going into the half. I believe it was 22-7. Arizona scored. Felt like there might have been some life there. There wasn't. Iowa State came out back-to-back touchdowns to start the third, and all of a sudden it was all hands off. Like we were running away with that one. Huge fan of the whiteout. I got to get this out of the way. I wore mine. Everyone in Ames, Iowa did their part. Like genuinely, all over Twitter, all I heard was, not enough people are talking about this Iowa State whiteout. All I talked about last week was how epic this whiteout was going to be. I think it actually played a big factor in this game. And one spot that I think it actually directly impacted, which this isn't a huge deal, but we are going to start here. At the end of the first quarter, Matt Campbell called timeout, and I was very perplexed by this call. I do think that part of the reason he did that was the student section was right behind the punter. And I don't know what ended up, what the decision-making was there, why it was due to wind, was it due to the student section? I don't have that answer, but I'd like to say that had something to do with it, the student section being right behind the punter. And obviously, everyone in Jack Trace showed up, and white was super loud, but the student section, I wonder if he was like, maybe we can get a not a false start necessarily, but maybe a false snap or something crazy, get something going here. That punt did lead to kind of the game being opened up, wide open for Iowa State. Obviously, they scored in the first, but then that punt was the one with the weird, did he get blocked into him or not? And I'm just going to come down and say he might have gotten pushed a little bit, but he lowered his shoulder into him. That's enough for me. And then that ended up in that resulted in an Iowa State touchdown, which then Iowa State punted on their next possession and touchdown on their first three possessions of that quarter, second quarter. The only other possession they had was basically to knee out the clock. So that I think was it was the weirdest situation, but I do think it opened up this game. The way that there was confusion. Wait, did you actually call a timeout? Okay, I guess we're going to punt it in this quarter. We come out of the break. Now Iowa State has momentum. It was just this weird time. I'm not going to say I condone that activity, but I do think it resulted in a win for Iowa State. I think that weird circumstance somehow cracked open the egg a little bit and let Iowa State grab onto something and get moving. Speaking of grabbing onto something and getting moving, let's talk about maybe the biggest takeaway from this game. And I saw it all over social, and I'm going to say it right here, loud and proud. Big 12. Look out. Chase Sowell is in town. Chase Sowell experience underway in Ames, Iowa. 4 receptions, 146 yards for Mr. Sowell, number 0. This kid balled out today. I mean, that was fun to watch. fun to watch. Along a 52, Brad Eskelson with a 45-yarder as well. Carson Hansen grabbed a 22-yarder out of the backfield. Bramer had a 27-yarder. Iowa State was letting it fly. We'll talk about offensive play calling, probably more so in the second segment. But first off, Rocco Becht was the surgeon. Chase Sowell, the recipient of a lot of those plays. That does feel really, really good. We will get to a lot of things later in this show where I'm like, I don't love you. Okay. Like very lot of uncertainty. Chase Sowell. This could be the guy. We thought Brett Eskelson was the guy. Maybe it's Chase Sowell. And if it's not, looks like we have two answers, which is always a good feeling. Looking at this receiving chart, very interesting. Not our typical receiving chart for Iowa State. Sowell, obviously, at the top of the 146 yards. Brett Eskelson with 54. Carson Hansen, a running back. So you now have gone wide receiver, running back. Then you have your two tight ends for Iowa State, each with 2 receptions, 29 and 19. Not necessarily the norm. Very much off script, if you will. Then Xavier Townsend comes in at the bottom with 1 reception for 9 yards. I liked the way that this game was called. But we got to just take a second and tip our caps to Chase Sowell. And then let's tip our caps again to Rocco Becht, who goes 14 of 20 with 243 yards through the air. Did throw a pick in this one. That was a questionable throw. Not really sure what we were doing there. And then obviously no passing touchdown, as I sort of mentioned there by reading the box score. Ends his, I believe it was 22-game passing touchdown streak. So that is a little bit of a bummer, but he did rush in for 3. He had 9 carries for negative 10 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very interesting stat line there. But I thought Rocco Becht showed up today. I thought he put the ball on the money when he had to, which was basically every single throw. Obviously, the pick wasn't ideal, but at that point in the game, it was this really weird vibe. I'm not going to lie to you. And I do think the vibe situation is something that needs to be looked at. We'll probably talk about that in the third segment, talking about injury concerns, and then we'll probably just split it right down the middle, injury concerns and vibe check, because what's going on with the vibes at times in this one. But nonetheless, Rocco Becht got it done, and Chase Sowell showed up big time. I was a huge fan of this Iowa State offense. Put a pause in it, come right back to it. Take a second, reflect, take another look at it. This is a different Iowa State offense than we traditionally see. And I think that this was a great offense today. Was it the best offense in the entire world? No, there were mistakes made. Don't get me wrong. But I thought overall we looked phenomenal. Like I was giving out my grades on Twitter by every quarter. You can follow me at Nick_Marv. I thought the average offensive grade for the day, probably, if not an A, like a 92, like right there. Very solid offensive showing today. And it was in a different fashion, which makes me hopeful about what this team is capable of. Okay. I do like Rocco Becht's, obviously throwing it around a little bit. We've got 6 guys catching passes, but stretching the field deep as well. I was a big fan of that. Big fan of Rocco in that way. And then Taylor Mauser, you know what? I'm actually let's save that. Let's save that for the second segment, because boy, he was on one today. He was on one today. Just to wrap up the offense there, I was a big fan of what I saw. I think we dominated that game offensively. 39 points. And it really, like I said, that second half was very odd. Very much an odd second half. So I was very happy with how the offense performed. But let's talk about play calling, because I do think that that's worth mentioning. And then we'll kind of switch over to the defense, because I think the defense maybe did more even than the offense today. Can't wait. I mean, we're 5-0, baby. Let's celebrate a little bit. All right, coming back right after this. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward for Iowa State was the deep shot from Rocco Becht to Chase Sowell. Not only did it breathe life into the Iowa State fans and offense against Arizona, but I think it provided a look into the future of what Iowa State offense could look like with Chase Sowell really spreading the field and being a deep threat for the Cyclones. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. The Iowa State offense killed it against Arizona. 14-39 final score. Iowa State comes away with the win. No notes, really. I mean, across the board, very, very good performance. There were some things that could be cleaned up. I'm not going to get too down on Mauser here, but let's talk about it. Taylor Mauser's play calling, for the most part in this one, very good. Very good. Honestly, there was only probably 2 plays, in my opinion, that really stand out that need to be talked about. The first of which being a 3rd and 1. It was the jet sweep to Xavier Townsend that ended up being a fumble, but it wasn't a fumble. Look, let's not get too cute with these play calls. If it's 3rd and 1, I tweeted out Rocco Becht is the next Jalen Hurts, the way that he is picking up these like 1-2 yard QB sneaks. He's falling into the middle of the end zone on a 3rd and 1, on a 3rd and 2. They're falling into the middle of the paint. So it's not like he's barely sneaking in, not really a viable option, especially against Arizona. We knew what we had. Even if we don't rush it with Rocco or sneak it with Rocco, let's maybe run a power or some sort of dive. Like, I don't know what we're sweeping for. What are we jet sweeping for there? And then it ended up being a weird thing with the fumble. But that was really my only main concern. Like, it really came down to that play for me. So across the board, Taylor Mauser, I think, called a phenomenal game. And it was comforting to know that he can basically go the entire game on offense and dial up banger after banger after banger. I mean, just killed it. And obviously the trick play with, 22, Brad Eskelson, 45 yards. That was awesome. You don't Bramer on the stat sheet, 1 of 1, 45 yards. I mean, you don't see that every week, all the time. That was a fun play, and it worked really well. Obviously, I wonder if that's a play that they would run without the throw, if it's like kind of an RPO situation. But Eskelson got so wide open. How do you not throw it? It was one of those where I don't even know if you could have thrown a pick if you tried. That one was really fun, But I think across the game, A to Z, not Brad Eskelson, Taylor Mauser called a very solid game. That was what we wanted to see as far as consistency, putting players in their strengths. The only drive that I was slightly questionable on was, I want to say, relatively late in the 3rd quarter. I tweeted out about it. I wanted to see maybe a little bit more methodical, slow drive, because our defense, I believe it was right after the 2nd touchdown they gave up. And I was like, let's really slow it down here and give the defense a chance to breathe. That was the only drive, honestly, where it felt like we got away from our kind of core principles, from our original idea, game plan, whatever. And then it didn't really go that well. So, like, our very next drive, we were like, all right, let's just get back on the gas. Let's just figure this out really quick. So that was the only thing, but across the board, very, very solid game from Taylor Mauser. Obviously loved the trick play. Now, defensively, let's talk about it. First off, Iowa State just killed it. We will have to talk about the injuries, but based on numbers and what was actually performed in this game, Iowa State defense absolutely killed it. Held Noah Fafita to 253, so not ideal. 2 touchdowns, yes, but 2 interceptions as well. A few yards, through the air, but the 2 picks, I do think, like, that was actually really big. They didn't come at the craziest times, like super dire need, especially the second one, but I do think that they kept this game from getting in a weird position, out of hand at a weird time. Ismail Mahdi only rushed for 85. The name that we looked out for against Kansas State obviously had 189 on 22 with the longest 60. And this one held in check, only rushed 13 times with a long of 23. That was the Iowa State defense doing exactly what I said they needed to do. Clogging the middle, linebackers flying to the C gap, or would it be the 9 tech, or however you want to look at it, filling that outside hole and forcing Arizona to throw against his secondary. Not nearly as many carries, 24 carries against Iowa State. Rushing against Kansas State, you saw 45 on the ground. So kind of forced them towards throwing it more. Obviously, with 48, there'll be 14 more throws than against Kansas State for Noah Fifita. So I liked where the defense was at tonight. Now, we'll talk about injuries in a second, but few notable players. Number one, I thought Trey Bell was phenomenal in this one. He's not going to be at the top of the depth chart. There were a few times that I thought he could have maybe had, this, that, or the other, but 4 tackles, 4 solos, 1 tackle for loss. Trey Bell, what a game. What a game. Making some really tough tackles as well. Other nameable players, Bacon at the top of this list, 8 total tackles, 3 solo. Jamison Patton was showing up big time, especially early on in this game. Ends up with 7 solo tackles. I mean, are you kidding me? Cooper Ebel, 4 total, 7 solos. Marcus Neal played really well. Willick was back in this game. Carson Willick, 5 totals, 2 solo from Mr. Willick. And then you've got Trey Bell, as I already mentioned. There were 1 total sacks in this game. I know I tried to say it in plural, but we only need to use the singular. There was 1 total sack. Trey Verdon ended up bringing down Noah Fifita late in this one. Iowa State still got it done without actually getting to the quarterback, which I was actually pretty happy with. I thought the secondary played really well. There weren't a ton of plays that I felt like we had guys just wandering wide open. Relatively good coverage. I thought relatively confusing coverage as well. I like the way that we were maybe going to drop 3 or rush 3, maybe rush 4, drop 8. Never really know what you're going to get. Noah Fifita, when he didn't have his initial kind of confidence boost early on, it felt like Iowa State's defense was basically had him flustered. I had it written down here at the end of the first quarter. I said, look out for Fifita being a little bit flustered. He does not feel comfortable early on in this one. I thought the defense played really well. Flew around, maybe a little bit too much at the end of this one. Got the job done, though. I thought the defensive line for Iowa State was better. I know we didn't talk explicitly about the offensive Iowa State's offensive line, but I thought up front, what we saw from Big Citrus in this one, this is the kind of thing you need to see from Iowa State's defensive line if you're going to be a Big 12 title contender. And there was a lot of narrative this week, a lot of question marks around, well, Arizona's line's really good. Can Iowa State hang? I think if there was a question mark of if Iowa State could hang with Arizona, now you're starting to question whether or not you're a Big 12 title contender. Obviously, your offensive line and defensive line are where a lot of games are won and lost, as they say, in the trenches. So getting this win here in this way for the defensive line, and then obviously the offensive line as well, this defensive line showed up today. I didn't feel like there was nearly as many question marks, at least for me, in pass rush, in run defense. I really thought they showed up big time in this one. Really proud of the defense. I think I'd probably give the offense like a 92, if not a 93. For the defense, I think I probably would go 88. Maybe let's go 87. I feel like the defense was really strong and did enough today, but there were some moments where it felt like vibes were slightly off. It felt like something was weird. And we'll talk about not only the vibes, because I do need to visit the vibes. We need to talk about that, but also we've got some injury concerns moving forward. And we'll talk about that coming up here in just 1 second. It's almost a weekend. Well, it is a weekend. So it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Iowa State, Chase Sowell. How can you not pick Chase Sowell to be the MVP for Iowa State after 4 receptions on 146 yards? I mean, kid showed up, and he showed up at a big time for Iowa State in their matchup with Arizona. Just like Chase Sowell delivered for Iowa State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/8. 18. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins, and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Any flavor you're looking to try, really, the best part of 5-Hour Energy is you can find it anywhere. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. So Iowa State offense, Iowa State defense, I thought both performed extremely well in this win over Arizona. One may even call it a dominating win. I really thought that this one felt wrapped up midway through this third. Really, I mean, back-to-back touchdowns for Iowa State started to feel a little bit out of hand. Started to feel like, okay, maybe this is over. And here at Locked On Cyclones, for our Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, I'm confused why we didn't start pulling our starters. Feels like we were really playing with fire a little bit, and we got burned, I think, in some sense. 3 huge named players for Iowa State with now what can be best described as a question mark next to their name. But moving forward, things I would not say are looking good. You know, that we've already got a lot of question marks across the rest of the team. And going into this one, obviously everyone was looking at the secondary already with Cooper being downgraded to out within the last 2 days. So there was already a huge question mark there. Then Kaijon Cummings-Coleman basically looked like he was in a lot of pain. I'm not going to speculate at all. Okay. We've talked about that here. That's not my job. My job is not to see from, a mile and a half away if I'm actually in person versus, 100-something miles away on the TV, what's wrong with the player. I'm trying to look at the team as a whole. Kaijon Cummings-Coleman going down with what looked like a very painful injury, and then having reports come out later that he was on the sideline in street clothes with the sling under his sweatshirt. Doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great to be looking at the secondary getting thinned out in that way. Then you talk about Big Citrus going down multiple times, being seen on the sideline, emotional. What's going to happen with him? Don't love that. And then at the very end of the game, we've got John Tezin up, 14-36 with 3 minutes to go, and he gets rolled up on. I don't feel great about the injury situation. And look, this is a victory Saturday night. We're having a good time. We're relishing the moments that was this great whiteout. And obviously Baylor last year was a lot of fun. This one might even be better because Chase Sowell's on the scene. The offense looks phenomenal. Defense holds Arizona to 14 points. No rushing attack. Just nothing really going for this Arizona team all night. Feels like Iowa State's at the top of the conference, and here we are talking about injured players moving forward. Like, I don't want to be here either. Feels like we should be talking about how great this team is, what is ahead of them. Like, this feels great. This was a real measuring stick for Iowa State. Arizona, another Big 12 opponent. They beat Kansas State. Like, can Iowa State hang with them instead of playing Arkansas State, lose them, or winning by 8 or whatever? I just can't have that mindset right now because those are big names. And then Rocco had a concussion situation arise. So there's a lot going on with this team. It felt like we just got to pull all our dudes. We are up 22 points or whatever, 14-36 at that point in the game. Like, why don't we just, if it gets close, we can put them back in type of situation. So I didn't love that. And the vibes also in this game fell off. And I don't want to talk about this forever, but this certainly to me is worth mentioning. It felt like there were moments in this one where, at least to me, it was kind of like, and I don't know if it was like the crowd it had a different vibe and the cameras were picking up on it, but felt like the team was like, all right, we're good. Like, yeah, they're going to get a few yards on us, but we're going to stop them later. Like, almost like a lackadaisical, mental approach to the game. I'm not saying that's what was happening, but there were a few defensive drives where I thought, like, when we lock in, it just had a different vibe to the players on the field. Like, you could tell when the guys were locked in this game. And that whole vibe situation was odd. I know, obviously, the big thing going into this game that we were looking at was how does the defense respond after the offense scores a touchdown. They did that at times. I thought, obviously, win 14-39. They have to. But I did think there were areas of, like, it felt like the defense was backing off. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see we're taking away the hope, I believe is what I heard on the broadcast. Like, that's the kind of thing I want to see from this defense, really suffocate them, pull the life out of them. And I thought for 99% of this game, the defense did that. But there were a few moments in some drives where I was like, let's check in on the vibes meter here. Doesn't feel like we're in a super good spot. I will say this, though. On the vibes front, the game ended in a really positive way with Chase Smith knocking through his what I believe to be first field goal. Knocked it in from 34. 100% of the night. Obviously kicked all the PATs for Iowa State, and we didn't even really talk about the 2-point conversion. Taylor Mauser, sicko, the swinging gate. I mean, I love to see it, but man, I did not expect that. And I'm not too shocked, but I didn't expect it. So obviously Chase Smith not kicking for every single touchdown. Should be 38 points instead of the 39, but still great night from Chase Smith. I love that we got the opportunity to allow him to kick in a game and really get some confidence moving forward, because who knows? Cincinnati might we might have to kick a few more times. You never know. Cincinnati put up a fight. Looked really good today against Kansas. Not a team that, like, this schedule is looking harder than I thought it was going to at the beginning of the season. Obviously, Kansas, a team that I thought was pretty good going into this week. Cincinnati wins it 37-34. Can't ignore that. And so maybe we have to kick a few extra times. I want Chase Smith to feel really comfortable going into that game, knocking out a 34-yarder at the end of this one at home in a non-pressure environment. At least he got the leg swinging, got the grease kind of into the joints. We're ready to roll for next week. So overall confidence level on this team is lower than I thought it was going to be. If you would have told me this was the score and this was the circumstances, like, it's not as high as I would have thought because of the injuries, but over the course of the entire night, really solid play. I thought solid play calling, put the guys in the right spots to get it done, and they did it. I feel good about this team. Probably like a 7 or an 8 right now, and it could be closer to a 9 or a 10, which is just, it's crazy to think of them, of Iowa State football being regarded that way moving forward. I think Iowa State, we could be looking at a top 10 team. Just based on what I'm seeing around the league too, around the rest of college football, look out. Iowa State looked really, really good in this one. Could be a top 10 team come the AP poll. That being said, I like it. I like what I see a lot. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. I can't wait to break this down a little bit further on Monday. So be sure to come back for that. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sign.